Released in 2002, The Elder Scrolls Morrowind remains a landmark in RPG history. It's still regarded by many fans as not only Bethesda's finest role-playing game, but one of the greatest RPGs ever made. Players continue to celebrate its deep mechanics, true player freedom, incredible writing, and the strange alien beauty of its world. Yet time has left its mark as technology has advanced, and with projects like the Oblivion Remaster reviving interest in Bethesda's back catalogue, many have wondered whether Morrowind might receive a modern overhaul of its own. According to former Bethesda lead director Bruce Nesmith, such a remake is highly unlikely, but that hasn't stopped fans from taking matters into their own hands. Enter Skywind, an ambitious fan project rebuilding Morrowind entirely within the engine of Skyrim. While certain systems, such as combat, have been carefully updated, the team have remained deeply committed to preserving the spirit, tone and detail of the original. The goal is clear: to bring Morrowind into the modern era without losing what made it so special. I had the opportunity to sit down with two of the project's leads, Zix and Argyle, to discuss the immense undertaking behind Skywind and what fans can expect from this long-awaited reimagining. So let's get into the interview, and if you enjoy interviews like this, check out the interview playlist in the video description and subscribe for more content like this. First question I have: what is Skywind? For someone who hasn't heard of the project, if you just want to give a general overview of what the project is and what you're trying to accomplish.
Skywind is a really unique modding project. So we are based, the game that we're working off of is the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. And the company that makes it, Bethesda Game Studios, they have a really unique standing in the gaming industry where they're really mod friendly. So this project comes from being huge fans of their work. So we're using the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim as a base to recreate the Elder Scrolls III Morrowind. So that game, there was a lot of time in between them, and there was a lot of graphical and gameplay updates in the time between each game coming out. And so we're kind of using it to go backwards in time and take this really interesting piece of fiction and kind of say, what would happen if there was more development time? What if there was more resources? What if there was just more room to explore what Morrowind would have been if it were made today?
Why Morrowind, right? Because you could, we got Sky Oblivion on the way. We got, you could make your own spin-off. What is it about Morrowind that's so special to you? Have you played the game yourselves? Have a great experience with it? Why choose this project?
I like Morrowind. That's just kind of it. It's my favorite of the Elder Scrolls games. I have like a weird history where I played them in reverse order. So I started with Skyrim. I played Oblivion next, and then I played Morrowind afterwards. And that one just stuck with me the most. It kind of had the most intriguing story to me. It had some of the more fun mechanics, I suppose. And I joined Skywind because I wanted more people to experience that. I felt that, I guess in certain circles online, there was sort of the sentiment that Morrowind is old, don't play that one. I don't like it because it looks old, or I don't like it because it feels old, or it doesn't tell me what to do as readily, or, nowadays, you buy it on, I guess, like Steam or GOG or something, and you don't get the instruction manual. There's a lot of information in that, so that kind of turns people away from that as well. Like, it's harder to get into.
It's a very unique atmosphere, right? It's the only Elder Scrolls game that is primarily set in a non-human province of the setting. And God bless, they really leaned into that, right? There's so much talk online about how Morrowind is this really alien world. There's so many different variations on the typical fantasy settings. I mean, the giant mushrooms or something, all the floating jellyfish, right? That's always crazy. But even going further into the cultural simulation that Morrowind was, of taking all this work to establish, okay, here's like a broad dark elf culture, but then here are like subcultures and political groups within it about how the different house politics interact. And then, even other distinctions between like what is a settled dark elf like versus what is a nomadic dark elf like, and how do they all interflict with each other, and layering that on top of what do you also do with this human imperial empire that has occupied their land and sort of dominated over their local government, yet they still retain some level of autonomy. I mean, for like a video game RPG, especially in 2001, that's crazy. Especially compared more now. I mean, there are some CRPGs that really go nuts, right? But and especially in like a first-person shooter or perspective and 3D world, it's really unique, and there hasn't really been anything like it since. And really, I would even say not even before. I think Morrowind is actually really accessible if you look at the standard of old computer role-playing games. And I mean, in a lot of ways, despite people saying it is old and like they hate dice roll combat, right? Like they kind of cemented a lot of the norms in Elder Scrolls games going forward, Oblivion and Skyrim. But it was just kind of this perfect bridge between old and new that really strikes me interestingly. And it just the other Elder Scrolls games don't do that for me. Like I'm on Skywind because of how interesting Morrowind was. Like when I first played Dragonborn DLC, that really caught my attention. That setting was so weird. And I mean, it's just where I've been since. Skyrim was also the first thing that I played. I played Morrowind for the first time in 2021, and it really registered a big chord with me. Yeah, but like I don't think I could be giving the same amount of effort if I were on the Skyblivion team, for example, because I just don't have that kind of connection with Oblivion as a game. But Morrowind, it's just eclectic, it's weird, and that really just captures my attention, and I've been volunteering for years now because it's just so interesting to me.
You're making the mod in Skyrim, which is a completely different game to Morrowind in terms of, you've discussed already the combat, voice acting. I mean, it's such a different game. How have you guys gone about trying to balance that? How are you going to try and what difficulties have you faced, or challenges, I should say, in bringing the modern aspects of Skyrim while preserving the uniqueness of Morrowind? Because it's not an easy thing to do.
The engine is pretty similar. If you were to open up like the construction set from Morrowind and the creation kit from Skyrim, with some tweaks and mods even for like the creation kit, or rather the construction set, they're very similar. So the structure from a technical standpoint of each game is by and large the same. There's a lot of things that the new creation kit makes very accessible that the old construction set didn't. Trying to marry stuff like mechanics and stuff like that might be a little more easier than some people think. It's just a matter of trying to find creative ways of doing that because it's not necessarily intuitive. The engine is very, from an outsider perspective, obtuse in certain aspects. Like dialogue is handled in something called quests, right? But not all dialogue is a quest, right? It's very weird. So yeah, things like some of the old mechanics, they're pretty easy to bring back and get that feel. But we understand that, people are kind of expecting like almost a new take on that sort of stuff, or like an intermingling of Skyrim, that gameplay, and Morrowind's sort of gameplay. So we have things like dice roll combat is taken out in favor of like the Skyrim action combat type style. But we're bringing back all of the, I think it's like 28 or something skills from Morrowind. I don't know off the top of my head, but all of the skills are back that were there. The attributes are back. Strength, intelligence, all that stuff is back. That's something that Skyrim didn't have. And I think from a mechanical perspective, it's sort of married pretty well. In terms of art, the art is by and large the same. It's very new. It's got a modern take on it. Not that anything is really that far off from what it was, but you look at Morrowind's really, really old, maybe 256 by 256 pixel textures, and you go, oh, it looks like this. But no, someone else might look at it and be like, oh, actually, well, this is the design that they were intending, right? So it might not come off as the same thing to certain people, depending on what they perceived Morrowind to be expressing. It it might have been chitin versus bone mold, on certain like filigree of some armors, So it's kind of, we're having to pick and choose and like deliberately make those choices with certain things that are a little ambiguous with the old art. But as far as I can tell, as a super lover of the original Morrowind, I think Skywind does an extraordinary job of bringing that same world with a little difference in very few difference, but pretty much the same thing. Like if I were to put the two side by side, which we've done before, like on some charity streams, which is pretty sweet, it ends up looking very, very comparable and very much a love letter in that way.
I would say that our goal is always to have base Morrowind at a minimum. Sometimes we want to expand on that, but overall, we're trying really hard not to cut features. And I mean, I think we're also pretty successful at that. There are limited circumstances where cutting makes the most sense. Like Zix already mentioned, dice roll combat. That was decided against a long time ago. People really hated that. It's kind of, this isn't like a thing that we're doing. Like, I am alone on the hill of I actually kind of like the dice roll combat. It's not nearly as complicated as people say. It's like literally like algebra with like two variables. It's not that bad. But like there's sort of a disconnect of like you see your sword go through someone and then like they don't react. We actually did discover we did discover dodge animations in the files, and it looked too janky. Like this isn't happening, but that was kind of like a surprise. Where I was like, oh, that would be cool. But like, sometimes you have to let sleeping dogs lie and just continue to make progress and not find new things to do. But I mean, we got the attributes back. We had coders who kind of figured out how to make extra perks. I believe that Skyrim has a hard perk limit, and we sort of have like another system of like dummy perks that kind of fill out the vacancies of it. I'm not a coder, so I can't really give you the perfect description of that, but we've had to put in different work on how to get things up and running again. We had a breakthrough with levitation about a year or two ago where we had a totally different system in play for that didn't work like how Morrowind worked, and now it's much more similar where it's just, depending on where your cursor is aimed, you just use WASD. There used to be like a whole separate system of like holding shift to go up or left control to go down, and now we don't have to do that. So there's all sorts of like little things where you never know exactly what's going to be challenging or not until you try to do it. But overall, we're trying really hard to bring stuff in. You also mentioned dialogue. That's my realm of expertise. I started as a voice actor, and then the dialogue was so frustrating because it was meant to be read that I joined writing to edit. So the Morrowind system had sort of like a Wikipedia style topic system where there were highlighted keywords and you'd click, 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 and like different keywords would take you to new dialogue paragraphs. But Skyrim has more of a conversation system. So going from keywords to topics, and you can't have someone being like, Balmora is a mercantile trade hub. And then like you would click, what do you do in Balmora? And it's like, Balmora is a mercantile trade hub. You can go to the corner club. Where like it just sounds really repetitive and immersion breaking. So we kind of had to edit lines to be, use more like object pronouns, like it, so that you weren't always using proper nouns in an unnatural way. So we want to keep the spirit of things while editing the lines to actually flow seamlessly, so it's not painful to listen to our dialogue that our voice actors worked so hard on.
As far as the open world design goes, is it a one-for-one, pretty much, replica?
I'd say so, with some additions. There are some, like, Morrowind is kind of empty on the roads a lot of the time. Besides, here's a Quama, here's a rat, here's a Kaguti, we have the opportunity to add little, like, I think it was one of the Fallout designers called it, like, little vignettes, like, oh, here's a little scene where, a couple skeletons or whatever are doing whatever they are poses, but level designers can sort of do that, wherever, whereas in Morrowind it didn't have a whole lot of that.
Yeah, I'd say it's very faithful. A lot of times, again, there are additions. Most of the time they are more detail oriented as opposed to like true structural changes. I'd say where you get the most differences, and this is kind of going outside of the scope of the question of open world, but I'd say our interior dungeons are where you see way bigger variations in the actual level design. But as for the open world, it's pretty similar. We make more use of verticality to kind of obscure sight lines because of the rendering is just much better in Skyrim. Morrowind relied very heavily on fog, and even though fog is important for our weather and our settings, it doesn't also serve the dual purpose of saving precious rendering memory like it used to in 2001.
I just want to touch on dungeon design. Obviously, Sky Oblivion, they're basically remaking every dungeon, so they're refreshing them all. Whereas the Oblivion Remaster copied it like for like, pretty much. Are you guys following the same blueprint in the dungeon design, or are you saying, you know what, they all kind of look similar in this regard? Let's freshen them up. Let's add something new. What's your approach in that regards?
We are kind of expanding on some dungeons, or the dungeons are a lot better. I don't want, maybe better is the wrong word. Yeah, the like one of them comes to mind. It's like a Dwemer ruin in the original game. I think it's in like the northwestern corner of the map or something, is like a single room. That's it. Now it's an actual dungeon and there are puzzles and stuff like that, maybe, or it's a little more circuitous or something. Having been a level designer myself for a little bit, I would take the original layout of, say, a cave, and I would use that as reference, but I wouldn't necessarily hold myself to it if I wanted to do something more interesting or potentially add a little gameplay loop like, oh, there's, this extra chest up on a new ledge or something where there wasn't before. You have access to levitation or whatever, something like that. Or maybe there's like a route B for a sneaky character or something. I think there's a lot more interest in that sort of stuff. If you were to look back at Morrowind 2, it's pretty easy to see repetition in caves, especially. Daedric Ruins were also very, very like similar, samey, to the point where it got very, oh, have I been here before? This one looks exactly the same as the past two of them that I've been to. So there's a lot more differentiation in the designs of the dungeons, I think.
The key guiding points, number one, is dialogue. If dialogue says that something in a dungeon is a certain way, like there's not a lot of ways around that, right? Especially later in the project's history, as a lot of voice acting has been turned in and it's no longer possible to get retakes or rewrites done. Dialogue has to be accurate, right? Number two, which is more of like persuasive, more so than binding, it'd be that if a dungeon's kind of like, for lack of a better word, iconic, right? We try to honor that. It's more so in like a dungeon like the one room Dwemer ruin that Zix said, or like if you walk into a Velothi tomb and it's oatmeal in the shape of an L with a chest that has like a bowl, rags, and 3 gold. Level designers feel a little bit more comfortable saying, well, this sucks. I want to make this engaging. I mean, I think we just have so many like actual dungeons. Like we might be one of the most dense dungeon mods out there, truly speaking. I think people will get exhausted of how many cool dungeons there are to explore compared to what they had in the base game.
Quest design. So Morrowind was built with the intention of no map markers, no real guidance. You have to listen to instructions, and the dialogue was designed that way. Skyrim was not that way. They put the map markers in, and many have said, well, if you took away those map markers, the game is unplayable. What's been your approach with balancing the two?
In Skywind, you have the option of toggling the quest markers and stuff like that. The game has to be playable without that. If it's not, then I mean, personally, I think that's bad design. But in general, I think most people would think that's bad design. Like, if you can't understand what the objective of a quest is, then you're kind of at a loss.
By default, quest markers and that sort of extra UI is off. We do value Morrowind's directions and journal approach. Skyrim, just kind of like the way it's set up when you're actually doing the quests, like in the CK and Papyrus, all that kind of like quest marker stuff just naturally comes along anyway. So it's really not any extra work for us to like have quest markers and stuff like that. Like it's all part of just properly setting the quest up. So it remains there. And like really, like if someone wants to do that, especially for like accessibility needs or something, it's really it doesn't hurt us if someone digs around in the options and just turns that back on. But we are focusing first and foremost on Are there directions? Is that correct? Do you still have to figure stuff out on your own? Because like that's what we loved. Like that was a huge part of Morrowind and something we wanted to preserve. Um, and I mean, a lot of the times it would actually probably have been more work for us to take out directions. They just kind of came pre-written. We needed to fix them sometimes. There are some like examples of directions that are just plain wrong, which is pretty funny. But yeah, overall that stuff stays. Fast travel is also on or it's an option. It's not on by default. Um, that's another one where it just kind of, if someone really just doesn't have time to play a lot of video games and they just would rather focus on getting the meat of stuff, like whatever, we're not the fun police on that aspect and it's already built in. So yeah, but out of the box, so to speak, it would be working much more like Morrowind.
Is there anything I haven't asked you about that you would want to cover that a Morrowind fan or potential Morrowind fan would be interested in knowing?
Something I always love to flex is that we have a really talented 2D art team that has done so much work to create cultural differences between the Dark Elf Dunmer Society and the Human Imperial Society. So their art styles are really different. I mean, a huge thing if you're a Morrowind nerd is like the Michael Kirkbride concept art. A lot of inspiration was taken from that for our Dark Elf art culture. So like a lot of their posters and all their writings in like the Daedric alphabet and stuff, which is all readable and I guess technically translatable. A lot of times it's just written in English, but with Daedric lettering. So translating feels like kind of a funny word for that. But decrypting, I guess. That's all there, but it really makes the world feel alive. And in a lot of ways, it's what people kind of remember Morrowind being like. If you're in the area of the zeitgeist, that's all familiar stuff. But actually seeing more art that looks like it was there all along. I mean, for me, it's a huge deal. I think it's super awesome, and I would want any Morrowind fan to take a look at the art that our team has done.
Obviously, it's a volunteer team. How has that been balancing a volunteer project and trying to, communicate all different teams? And can you just tell me your story as a studio, I guess, or however you want to phrase it? Just tell me your story.
Skywind is a huge volunteer project. It started long before I joined. We have a video, I think it's called The Road So Far. It kind of covers our history as a project a little bit. But yeah, that covers our history. It's all volunteer based. We started on a forum site and it evolved to eventually move to Discord is where we primarily have we talk every day within tons of channels. We have a 3D channel, we have a 2D channel, we have a landscaping channel, coding, blah, 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 all that stuff. I think the video that we have estimates how many people we have on the team. I can't remember, but over the years, it had to have been over 1,000 people. Currently, between all the departments, I don't know, like well over 100, well, maybe well over 200. The credits page that we have is enormous. Within just the 3D team, I typically manage like 20 to 30 people at a time. On and off, everybody sort of has their personal lives. This is a volunteer project. So, just giving personal anecdote, I've been working on it 5 to 6 years now. It's hard for me to say because we've just hit a new year almost, even though it's 2 months past. But yeah, like I can't work on this constantly. I have a full-time job. I have family, friends. I have hobbies outside of Skywind itself is a hobby, right? I can't necessarily treat it like a job. Otherwise, there's things like burnout. Things like getting just too obsessed with it. I've had issues with that before, and I think I'm in a bit of a better place now. But you kind of multiply that by like 100 people, right? And it very much becomes, that's exactly why we've spent this long on a project like this. It's all volunteer. And it sort of ebbs and flows and progress comes and goes, that sort of thing. But it's always in the direction of getting the thing out. There's always progress being made. If it's slow or fast, there's always progress being made.
I'd say fundamentally this is a passion project and it's run by fans, right? I think over time, I mean, there have been different like eras of Skywind. I don't think it's really that notable to say so, but just over time, like this is very much a ship of Theseus in a way. Of a lot of the old guard who founded the project have had other things to do with their lives and aren't here anymore. We have people who've been around for a long, long time. I think this project arguably has roots even in like 2011 with more Oblivion, when Skyrim came out. There are definitely people who have been working on Skywind for over a decade. I'd say they're very few and far between these days, but you know, I'd say we maybe have potentially 60 active devs at a time doing different types of work, and not everyone does the same work, and that goes up and down. Like Zig said, family, friends, obligations, job, other pursuits. Like there's just so many reasons to be doing stuff. And we really prioritize that people put themselves first, like we don't want anyone to suffer making Skywind, right? That's not the point. Like this is something that brings us joy. This is a community effort, and we want this to be like a labor of love 100%. And I mean, it's also been very educational for us too about like the development process and how things work, and developing better internal infrastructure over time, better spreadsheets, better accountability, and all those things that kind of like all the boring admin that actually makes the magic possible, right? But it's so essential, so essential. Some of us want to do like make other games. Some of us have no interest in doing gaming at all. And I guess another thing as well is like we definitely want volunteers, but we do also have an application process. So we try to make sure that the people volunteering on the project can work at different standards that each team lead works on, just to make sure that we're always going forward. Because it's really important to us that even if people are busy, like we want them to be reliable, we want them to be present, we want them to be excited to work with us, right? And make sure that like nothing has to get redone or that nothing has like skipped a step. It's really important for us that this comes out to be the best thing that it can be. And doing that takes time. I mean, there are AAA studios and I mean indie studios where like this is what people do day in, day out as a career. And even that takes so much time. So, when your primary development body is people who have so many other things going on, like it's a labor of love for sure.
When you look at other mods like Sky Oblivion, Fallout 2 Remake, Fallout London, things like that, is there any? Do you guys communicate with these teams? Do you take any ideas from them? Like, is there anything in that regards?
We communicate a good bit with the other Skyrim modding projects, specifically the Skyrim ones. Each like Bethesda game, right, is kind of on the same creation engine, but they have differences with each one. So there's only so much like technical knowledge that we can infer from the other instances of Creation Kit. But teams like Sky Oblivion, we've had like asset trades before. Beyond Skyrim, we talked to somewhat decent amount. I think we have the guy who made the behavior tool or the animation tool for creature, sort of new creature creation. Started on Skywind, and he's since shared all of that stuff with everybody in the modding community.
I'd also say kind of I don't mean to be contrarian, but just because I'm not sure what the parameters of the question are, we don't like have a lot of shared infrastructure with them. We are in contact, like we have points of contact that we can reach out to, and they're really great about responding to us. But I think sometimes people might assume that we actually are all kind of like different faces on the same head, when that's really not the case. We definitely sometimes get people who are lost and ask us when Sky Oblivion is coming out, and like we just don't know. So sorry. Like you get a much better answer from them. And even though they're super willing and friendly to just be around for us, we don't like have a formal overlap, if that makes sense.
Someone who has never played Morrowind before in their life and tries this Skywind when it drops, or someone who has, what is it that each of you want the person to walk away with? What, like, if someone gave you a review and said, I didn't know what to expect, here's what I left with, what is it that you guys would want that person to leave with?
One of my motivations is getting more eyes on the narrative of Morrowind, on sort of the feel of that world, because it's very different to, I guess, modern Elder Scrolls games, if you want to call 2009 modern, or 2007, whenever Oblivion was. I don't want to be that guy, right? But Elder Scrolls was really cool back in the day. Not that it's not now. I like Skyrim more than I do Oblivion personally. I think it's cooler. But me also, like, I think Morrowind is cooler. It's really weird. It's really awesome, and it's something that you can't really get the same feeling of anywhere else, I don't think. I'm a huge like sci-fi nerd, and there's tons of sci-fi influence in Morrowind for no reason other than there just is, right? It's really interesting from a fantasy setting, and I hope that people come out of Skywind having never played Morrowind before. Like if Skywind is their first experience, that Elder Scrolls can be super interesting or fantasy worlds can be super interesting. It doesn't have to be, even though it's interesting, it doesn't have to look like Lord of the Rings, or it doesn't have to look like King Arthur and Merlin, right? It can be something wildly different.
I think that really captures the spirit of what I would do as well. I think there are a lot of people who just like love Morrowind as a sandbox because it's pretty awesome that there's like no guardrails. You kill like a main character and like the main consequence is a text box, and that's just like whoopsie daisy, that's bad. You might want to reload a save, but you don't have to. Like that's cool. But I mean, the thing that kept me coming back was definitely just the richness of the world, and to just so people can take away with like what games can be like and how creative they can be, and it's worth giving a shot to smaller titles and seeing what kind of richness they explore. Because I mean, in 2001 Bethesda wasn't like the super giant it was now. I still want there to be games that people are interested in where you walk out of a boat and you look at a gray guy and he goes, "Beat it, fetcher," and you're like, "Whoa!" Like what just happened? I just wanted to leave people with a sense of curiosity, like what's out there, what other fiction can they find, what other fiction can they make.
How can people support the project?
Volunteer.
Yeah.
Volunteering is very important. It's very nice to have people with, specialized skill sets come in. Me being the 3D lead, it's really cool to have people applying that, like to work on clothing, hint, hint. But yeah, you can volunteer for a lot of things. We have our volunteer page, like on our website, and it kind of outlines what we need. We keep that updated. There are some times where level design applications might close because we kind of have a critical mass of level designers and we don't really need anymore. Like for the 3D team, for example, the 3D team is always looking for people. But it's a little difficult to say, you would be good for it because you have a skill set that maybe we're not really looking for at the moment. But yeah, we don't take donations. We just can't, whether or not we've elected to or not. We just don't take donations. I think historically we have. I don't think any of the leadership team has been around in that time, but our stance now is that we just don't. Word of mouth is huge. I personally think that like this project would die if not for the relevance it has with its fans. If you like it, talk about it. Hang out in the Discord server. Tell other people to watch our videos, that sort of thing. Come to the live streams. I'm not very good at live streaming, but I do it from time to time. Like, and other members of the team do it too. So, it's a good time. We would not exist without our fans. So any support, be it word of mouth or otherwise, is super nice.
Volunteering is huge. Please recruit your friends. Like if you are like, oh man, like I don't have any development skills and I don't have any time to learn like the quick to pick up stuff. Like got a friend who likes us, like please just like spread the word. The more hands we have, the better. The more people working on Skywind, the faster it's going to come out.
Longtime fan of Morrowind, I genuinely can't wait to experience what the team accomplishes with Skywind when it's finally released. The passion and care behind this remake are clear, and it's exciting to see such dedication poured into bringing this world back to life. If you'd like to support the team or learn more about the project, you'll find the links to all of their social channels in the description below. And if you enjoy interviews like this one, be sure to check out the full interview playlist linked there as well. That's all for this one. Av out.